welcome everybody to the online George Weekend Workshop for the month of August. It's going to be spring soon, and it reminds me of life and how we can go through life, going through the seasons, and there's always an opportunity for rebirth. There's always an opportunity for more life. And that is symbolic not just in nature but in us as well. And we can begin to look at our own further growth, our own further development. So I'm looking forward to this weekend, the month of August 2020 with the George Online Group, and to look at what is, to take growth further. What is growth? What is development? So everything in life is either growing or dying. Anything in life is either growing or dying. So if something is growing, it's alive. When it's alive, it's growing. And if it's not growing, it's dying. And we might not realize that everything, including the human body, has this process of going through growth. We go through growth. So the physical growth, the physical development. As a child, you go through a physical growth and a physical development. And things in life, also animals go through a development. Plants go through a development, a growth and a development. Life supports growth and development. But the human personality does not grow and develop naturally, in the sense that a person can remain the same person and they might not grow. Your personality, your personal growth, your personal development doesn't happen naturally, not in the way we live and the way our society is currently on the planet. Maybe there were times in history, at the Renaissance maybe, I don't know. And I know for sure that there will be times in the future where the society is really in support of spiritual growth and personal development. We saw the Arab Peninsula under the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad go through a growth from barbarism, being barbarians, to having ethics and a community that organized itself as a theocracy, where it's involved in the community's well-being. So in history we saw at different times, or history might bear witness, and in the future it might bear witness, that at certain times there were certain teachers or there were certain structures in place that supported the growth of the person. But somehow, where we are in history at this particular point, there's really no, generally speaking, there's no structures that support personal growth and development. There's no structures that really, I'm speaking, of course there might be certain spiritual groups and certain religious organizations in different ways that might be supporting humane living, human excellence, spiritual excellence, but generally speaking on the planet, when we look at our countries, when we look at the world we live in, politically, scientifically, legally, they don't really support the personal growth and development. We see leaders getting involved for all kinds of unethical behaviors and operating in a very, at sometimes, let's say irregular manner, and at other times uncouth kind of ways, uncivilized ways of operating, egoic and so on and so on. This is not judging, it's just saying. And we see that in ourselves, and we see that in people we know, that we continue to live in the society where there is no real support for spiritual growth and personal development. And our personalities and the personalities of the people around us, the people in our communities and societies and in the world, you can see the effects of this lack of spiritual growth and personal development as people become more and more intellectually, stronger. But there's no beingness, no spiritual strength, no spiritual growth and development, personal growth and development. So we see people in the society, and yes, there are a lot of religious people, but that doesn't mean that they are growing spiritually. It could be, but it doesn't mean that they're growing spiritually, and it doesn't mean that they're developing personally. It doesn't mean that. And we don't realize it. You see, when you grow up in your society, in your community, in the world that we live in, you think everything is normal and everything is fine and there's no issue. But what we are, aware and becoming more aware of, that there is no proper support and direction for human beings to grow in terms of their personality. While we may grow physically and develop physically, the human body has hormonal systems that at different periods, have different kind of function, and the body goes through its cycle of birth to death. There's a growth and that, and in life things, it happens like that. So we might not realize that the personality or the person is something that can actually grow as well, and that growth has to be chosen, and that growth has to be supported. So that's what we are about as a group of people who live life. You can live life like the way you always did, and you can live like how everybody else lives. We can get lost in the way society conducts itself and carries itself. You can. And you live out like the tribe and what they've lived out. So we haven't observed really, unless, you had parents and family members and others and teachers that were constantly interested in spiritual growth, reading, studying, learning, applying themselves. We haven't really witnessed this. And so we might be the first group of people that we know that actually are interested in going beyond who we've been and how we've lived and what we've experienced. See, we might have a focus that nobody we know might have ever had. And some of us might be still wondering, what is Ashraf teaching? What is this about? Is this about another religion? Is this about another philosophy? Is this another, belief system? And the answer is no. It's none of that. This is an opportunity to support our spiritual growth and personal development. This is to support you in going beyond who you've been and going beyond how you've lived and going beyond what you've experienced. Because your personality limits you. Your personality will limit you. And oftentimes it's our personalities that limit us. We don't even realize that we have a personality and that our personalities are limiting us. We don't even recognize the role of our personality. I'm using the word personality in a very common kind of definition, but I usually prefer the word consciousness. You have a certain level of consciousness, and your personality is a reflection of your level of consciousness. How aware you are as a person is reflected in your personality. How you conduct yourself in life is a reflection of your awareness. So there is not much institutions, especially educational institutions, that support people in becoming aware. there's no real support in becoming aware. The educational institutions are masters at schooling us. And I'm not saying that's bad or good, I'm just saying that that's what they do, they school us, we get schooled. Human beings are schooled by their families and by their schools and by the religious and other institutions and cultural institutions, and sometimes it's great. You can function in the world and you can conduct yourself in a community, and you have a reality within that community. But what happens when the personality from within that community is actually limiting us? Yes, so we fit in life, we fit in with people like us, we feel accepted, we're doing what everybody else does, we live like how everybody else lives. But what happens when we reach the same glass ceilings, these limitations of the tribe? The level of insecurity that the tribe lives at, we perpetuate it. The level of powerlessness that the tribe lives at, we perpetuate it. The level of deprivation the tribe lives at, we perpetuate it. What happens when we've reached the peak of what can be lived in the tribe, and we find it wanting, we find that it is not really doing the trick? You understand? What happens when we carry on in life and we've got our job and we've got our car and we've got our money, but within us there's no security, within us there's no power demonstrated, within us there's no satisfaction? What happens when we do all that we were told to do and we are surviving well, but we're not really fully satisfied and fulfilled? Now that's what we're talking about. What happens when you've done all you've done and you have achieved, people are looking at you and saying, wow, you're so successful, wow, you got a home and a house, wow, you've got a husband, or you've got a wife, or you've got a family, wow, you're doing so well, but within you, you don't feel good. You've just been living by the societal standards and conditions, and you've been fitting in and you've been doing everything, as they told you to do, and you don't want to rock the boat, and you're just carrying on, but it's still, when you get up in the morning, you're not really feeling fulfilled. You try to distract yourself, you try to keep yourself busy, you try to lose yourself in work, in family, in relationships, but there's this something doesn't feel right. So, what about that? There's a glass ceiling, a limitation, that the personality, as we have developed it through our socialization from our families, our tribes, our communities, and including the global human family, there is a limitation. And we can see it when we look around us, the way the world is, what's going on in the world, what we're living through. We might excite ourselves, but I got this, but I'll get another one, I'll get more of it. But, are we really experiencing okayness, a sense of non-neediness, a sense of freedom? Are we feeling okay without anybody, without anything? See, because the personality will be controlled by the belief in need. You'll be some kind of compulsive, needy person. In some way you'll be a beggar. So there might be a lot of people who might have achieved in terms of the tribal standards of what it means to achieve Some tribes might be get a job. If you got a job, you're okay. Some tribes might be have a lot of money, and then you're okay. Some tribes might be drive a nice car, and then you're okay. Or get married and you're okay. Or have children and you're okay. Or whatever. Look pretty, then you're okay. Whatever it is in the tribe. What happens when you achieve those so-called goals, the tribal values, but you realize you're still needy? You're needy. You don't feel secure. You need a job, you're controlled by a job, you're controlled by your partner, you're controlled by your money situation, you're controlled by your business, you're controlled by your family. All those things that the tribe said to us, when you have it, you would have done so well and you got it, but you're there and you might feel controlled by what you have. Might even feel like you're forced to do something you don't want to do. What happens when you're living your life but you don't feel free? You're living controlled, and you're living trying to control. What happens then? How many people actually begin to reflect on that and address that? The personality says, just carry on. Just carry on. And the neediness shows up in our experience of life, being overpowered by something or somebody. And that powerlessly, that we're not nurturing ourselves, powerlessly relating, we're living, we got the things, we achieved the things that the tribe told us to achieve, but we recognize I'm not really nurturing myself. I'm not really supporting a nourishing experience of life. I don't feel okay, and I'm trying to feel okay. I need to feel okay. I need to feel okay. And I'm trying to feel good. And I'm trying to avoid feeling bad. What happens when you have all the things, the forms that it was suggested for you to have, but you realize that your inner state is one of insecurity, and the way you relate is a way of being powerless? What happens when you realize that I don't really nurture myself, and I don't really support a nourishing life experience? I'm not actually experiencing being nurtured by me and others. I'm not experiencing being nourished by me and others. What happens then? That we become not only like needy beggars, instead of being secure adults, and we're operating as addicts rather than powerful, insecure instead of secure, powerless instead of powerful. We're not really owning our power to apply ourselves in our lives, caring for ourselves in our lives. And thus we're not living creatively. We're not looking forward to the rest of our lives with a creative focus. Like growing our experience of life to a higher level of enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment. We're not into growth in terms of our being and becoming, living and experiencing. We're not ambitious, not in an egoic way, but in a fulfillment way. What is more enjoyable? What is possible for us? What can we participate in the creation of? How can we live creatively? So what I'm saying is, oftentimes in society there is no support for people to grow spiritually, develop personally, and to live a life of enrichment. What you look at the internet and all that is like achieve, get more, make more money, get more this, this is how you can get. But we don't get the kind of support that is, the society is not structured in the way currently the way we're operating as one global human organism, as a collective, is not really, benefiting and nurturing of our species. We are creating ourselves to be fixated spiritually and stagnating and actually going through what happens after stagnation is deprivation. So we're not really supporting human beings. No, not really supporting. In terms of spiritual growth, personal development, life enrichment. And if we look at ourselves, we want to ask ourselves, do we support spiritual growth? Do we know what spiritual growth is? Do we know what personal development is? Do we know what life enrichment is? Do we know what this is all about? Do you know what spiritual power? Do you know what is personal power? Do you know what is creative power? How would you know? How do you know what is spiritual power? How do you know what is creative power? Spiritual power, personal power, creative power. How do you know? Who told you about it? So, we are part of this teaching that is focused on the growth of the personality, supporting personal growth, supporting spiritual growth, supporting us in living more spiritually empowered, personal empowered, and creatively empowered. If you didn't know, that's what our work is about. It's not anything to do with religion, a philosophy, an ideology. It's got nothing to do with beliefs. It's got to do with experience, how we experience ourselves. How secure do we experience ourselves to be as spiritual beings? How powerful do we experience ourselves to be as human beings, as adults? And how creative we experience ourselves to be as, growth-orientated beings, life-enriching beings, Are we focused on spiritual growth? Are we focused on personal empowerment? Are we focused on creative empowerment? So these are the three power areas that we are, focusing on, that is the length and breadth of the Blissful Living teachings. The Blissful Living teachings has these three areas as the areas of focus. Going beyond being a beggar and being a boss or a believer, if you want to call it that. Basically going from insecurity to security, releasing the beliefs in need, the major trances, going from operating powerlessly to operating powerfully in our lives, from children to adults, from addicts to adults, and going from victims to vicegerents or victors, means people who live feeling overpowered, who live powerlessly and needily, and end up blaming everybody because they don't live creatively. See, we want to go from living reactively to living creatively. So that's what this work is about. Our Blissful Living Teachings work. It's about us and our becoming aware that there is for us these areas to focus on and apply ourselves in. That we can go beyond our level of insecurity to a greater level of security. We can go beyond our level of powerlessness, which basically means interacting powerlessly with yourself, your body and your life, to interact in a supportive way, powerful way, nurturing yourself, your body and your life, to be more involved and available to yourself, your body and your life, and your afterlife as well. And then thirdly, it's to be more aware of what potentials and possibilities that exist for you. And to claim them. What can you be? What can you become? What can you live? What can you experience? And this has been my journey. This has been my journey. It's been more an adventure than a journey. I have gone from extremely needy to somewhat secure. And I'm working on a greater level of security. When I was needy, let's say it this way, when I experienced myself as being needy, because we're not really needy. We can experience ourselves as being needy, but we're not really needy. When I experienced myself as being needy, when I had the beliefs in need and I was identified with these beliefs in need, when I was showing up in the world promoting insecurity, I experienced myself as needy. And that's where there was the cigarettes and the addictions and the compulsions, biting my nails, fingernails, and pulling out my hair, having a sort of obsessive compulsive way about me, addictive personality. So the more I became aware that there is security for me to be aware of and to experience and to support, that I could experience myself as being more okay than I did experience myself, the more okayness I supported myself in experiencing, the less needy I was. Cigarette smoking, all these conditions, they have all kinds of names like trichomania, which is like pulling out your hair. Trichomania, I think it is. Nail biting. They all fell away. A whole lot of behavioral problems fell away as I began to know that I was okay and experienced being okay and I supported being okay. So this is the blissful living path. It's based on my experience in my life. For I recognized that there was something definitely problematic with my behaviors. And I address my levels of security, and I continue to address my levels of security. The first power, security, that area. I also noticed that I never used to be focused on me and my life. Even as a student, I didn't pay attention to my studies. I didn't pay attention to me and my life. I was powerlessly interacting with me, my body, my life. I was powerlessly interacting like that. And then I addressed that. I began to address me and my power levels. Why am I operating in a non-nurturing way? How can I be more nurturing? How can I support a nourishing life experience? Can I support that? And that's the second level of power. That's power. First is security. Second is power of selffulness. We call it selffulness. I started supporting me becoming a more selfful human being, more attentive to me, my body, my life, developing that. And the good news is, as a grown-up, as an adult, you can definitely up your power levels. You can experience becoming more and more secure. And you can experience becoming more and more powerful. And you can experience becoming more and more creative. This is where my creative potential comes in. I've developed the Blissful Living teachings, and now I'm focusing on supporting the international community. Slowly, I have a creative endeavor of universal bliss, sharing with people how they can attend to the first power center. How they can become more and more secure. Well, the thing is, you can't really become more and more secure. You can experience being more secure because you already are secure. You're just not aware of it. So, what we're looking at here is not progressing through doing, prospering through doing, but first becoming more aware. That awareness is the key. If you become more aware, you can progress and prosper. If you become aware. If you're not aware, if you remain unconscious, if you remain at the same level of personality fixation or underdevelopment, if you don't even begin to recognize that your personality requires support, that you got to support your own personal growth in these three areas. If you don't see that and attend to that, there can be no progress and prosperity in a real way without this attention to your security levels, your power levels, and your satisfaction levels, or your levels of security, selffulness, and satisfaction. If you do not give yourself and support the growth of your personality, then there is no forward movement for you. You'll just be the same person, trying to get more, thinking if you get more you'll be happy. You'll just be lost in a trance, and you wouldn't have really grown and developed. The success is in becoming aware. So that's what our work here, especially over this weekend, is going to be about, supporting a further level of security, selffulness, and satisfaction. If you want to be part of that minority on the planet at this point, to move forward. So, very few people actually stop and give thought to what I'm saying, because the people around us just operate unconsciously and remain abandoning of their level of awareness and involvement in life. The average person doesn't even know that their personality is something that requires their attention. They don't even know that while everything else, animals, plants, and the human body grows and develops, the personality doesn't grow and develop automatically. There has to be an involvement. There has to be attention and participation. And not everybody wants to do that, because people think we don't have to do that. That's not something we have to do. We just can live like how we've always lived. Just get more money, just get more of whatever you want, and get people to behave the way you want them to be. As long as you don't feel bad, that's great. Live like that. As long as you get more, you'll get excited in life. That's really, what life is about. The average person will tell you that. If you had to have a little chat with somebody, they'll tell you basically that life is about avoiding feeling bad. And life is about trying to feel good. And if you can avoid feeling bad and you're trying to feel good, that's awesome. And if you have more money, if you have a bigger business, if you do this and if you do that, and after this and after that, and when and this and that. So you'll see people living like this. This is what you'll observe. This is what we observe. People are living. If you look at yourself, if you look at other people generally, if you haven't done work on yourself, if you haven't been a person on a path of spiritual growth, personal development, and life enrichment, you will see the same in you. You will see yourself living to avoid problems. As soon as there's a problem, then you get upset and you want to do something about it. As long as there's no problems, you carry on in an unconscious way. No need to learn, no need to grow, no need to explore, no need to heal, no need to develop, nothing. Let's just carry on the way we carried on yesterday, is the motto of the world. And when there's a problem, let's protest. Let's react to it. Let's try and sort it out. And let's carry on like that. And while we're carrying on like that, what is going to make us happy is, let's get this and let's get that, or let's get this and that to change. And if we get this and that, and we get this and that to change, and we get excited, we believe that there's something, when we get it, or when it comes to be, or it is the way we think it should be, that means something. We become so obsessed with experiences. And, focusing on experiences. I need more of this, I need to get more of that. It's more of how to, in life, just get these outcomes. So much focus is put on avoiding feeling bad and trying to feel good. But not as much focus, or if any focus, is put on developing of ourselves to reach a higher quality of being and a higher quality of interacting with ourselves and others and our lives and our bodies and others, and focusing on creative living. There's not as much focus put on that. But out of necessity, in my life, coming from the past that I have lived, I had to give these 3 areas focus. This teaching, the Blissful Living teachings, is over 20 years. Been working on these 3 areas of my life and teaching it to other people, to apply ourselves in these areas of our lives. And I'm glad that there are other people in the world who actually are beyond the trances. That living in this trance, I'll be okay when, as long as I got, then I'll be okay. I need to be okay. I need to do to be okay. Somebody else needs to do for me to be okay. Something must be, then I'll be okay. Something mustn't be, then I won't be, then I'll be okay if something is not. And if something is, I'll be okay. This living your life from these trances, controlled by these trances, these everyday trances, the specific trances. Not everybody is aware of the trances that control them. and that they're controlled by trances. They're living lost in trances. So we are an anomaly compared to other people on the planet, that we are beginning to explore our relationship with ourselves and supporting a relationship with ourselves of becoming more aware, looking at us, being with us, attending to us, looking at our personality, looking at our consciousness, and addressing the way we are, the way we be, the way we live, the way we experience. This is not the norm. It will be the norm in the future sometime, I'm not sure when, but it is not the norm now. The world leaders, so-called leaders, professionals, religious teachers, school and university teachers, professors, all are controlled, by the system of fixed personalities. Just carry on perpetuating ourselves at the level we're living in terms of insecurity, in terms of powerlessness, interacting powerlessly, self-negating, life-neglecting, rather than self-nourishing and self-nurturing and life-nourishing. And this level of victimhood, we see it individually, we see it in groups of people, we see it around the world. Put on the television and you'll see in the news, people are like victims. We need somebody to change. We need somebody to change something. Because in the meantime, it's the people. The people are not really aware and being creative. They're not aware and becoming creative. So we can do that individually. Individually, we each can support our spiritual growth from insecurity to security. We can support our personal development from powerlessly relating to ourselves, our bodies and our lives, to powerfully relating with ourselves, our body and our lives. And we can support operating in life creatively, championing our being and becoming, our living and experiencing, to use the imagination, to use being enlightened as a human being, to see alternative realities for us, to be, to become, to live, to experience. That's possible for us. I'm doing it. It wasn't always like this, but I've grown, I've developed, I've applied myself. Nothing's changed in the world, it's the same world. It's just I'm relating to me, becoming more aware and supporting myself in becoming more secure, experiencing being more secure, experiencing being more powerful, and experiencing more creative. And as I said to you, you can't become more secure. You're already secure, but you can experience being more secure. You can't become more creative, or let's say powerful. You're as powerful as you can be, but you're not experiencing it. And you are creative, but you're not experiencing being creative because you're not aware. You're not giving attention to these three areas of your life, or these three areas of life. Your security, your personal power, your spiritual power, your personal power, and your creative power. The three power centers. So that's what we've been doing for all these years, and now we're coming towards the end of the teaching, relatively speaking, compared to all the years that we've put into it. And our teaching will support us go beyond who we've been, how we've lived, and what we've experienced. And this will mark the growth, of me into what I've always wanted to be and become, live and experience and do it. And that's where universal bliss takes over. And that's where living blissfully takes over. And that's where the Bliss University takes over. These are projects that I intend to support globally, with universal bliss being the first of those projects, because it focuses on security. So that's our introduction for this weekend workshop, and what we're going to look forward to over the weekend workshop is to actually address our experiencing of security. What is our level of security, and how do we show up in the world supporting a greater level of security? How to get to that point? What keeps us from there? And how to show up in the world being more nurturing of ourselves and nourishing of our lives? And what keeps us from that? And how to live creatively. And what keeps us from living creatively. So these are the 3 power centers that we're going to explore, mainly 1 and 2 in this workshop, and subsequently power center 3 towards the end of our time together in blissful living. So I'm looking forward to the rest of this weekend and having a very more practical, involved engagement with the students over this particular weekend. So that's my introduction. That's basically my introduction for the weekend. And just to say congratulations to the students who have been on the path and remain on the path and apply themselves as best as they can on the path. For it's truly a noble endeavor. It's really, really a noble endeavor. It's a labor of love when you begin to include yourself in your own awareness, and you give yourself, your life, the time, the attention that it deserves, becoming aware patiently, being with yourself, and supporting this. It's a process. And a large part of it is developing the right attitude towards yourself and your life. And then it's making that commitment to exploring what's the glass ceiling, what's holding us back. What is that sabotage that happens? How do we sabotage ourselves? How do we keep ourselves in a shallow reality of insecurity rather than experiencing the deeper reality of security? That there is for us to experience security, but how is it that we are not experiencing security? How is it that we are not experiencing security? What is our role? There is for us to experience being more secure. We can experience being more secure, but how is it that we're not experiencing being more secure, and how is it that we're keeping ourselves insecure? This is a very important part of our process. And we might not even know what security is, or that there is for us to experience security. It might begin with that we don't know what security is. And we are not even aware what insecurity is, and that we are living in a way that promotes insecurity. We might not know that there's a secure way of living and an insecure way of living. We might not realize that. But we can begin to see that. We can begin to see that in other people. First, look around you. We'll look at examples. And then we can begin to look at ourselves. And in the area of security versus insecurity, where are we? How do we undo where we are? How do we then apply ourselves and show up to support security? That's the first power center, first power level. Security. The second power level is selffulness. We want to recognize. Do we know that there's a thing called selffulness? That you can be self-full or you can be self-abandoning. Self-abandoning means selfish and selfless. How do we show up in the world? Do we show up in support of selffulness, or are we showing up against selffulness and might even be for self-abandonment? How do we show up in the world? What is our role? Are we in a shallow experience of life, like beggars, needy, or addicts trying to avoid feeling bad, trying to feel good? Are we in a shallow experience of life? Can we get to a deeper reality of living? That we as grown-up adults can actually go from insecurity to security. Will we choose it? Will we support it? We can go from self-abandonment, which is selfishness and selflessness. We can actually choose self-fullness, relating powerfully, nurturing ourselves, our body, our lives, supporting, nourishing life experiences. We can be that way. Do we know that we can be that way? Do we support being that way? What do we support being? That's the second power level. The third power level is how do we move forward in the life experience? Are we living at a higher level of grown-ups, living creatively, focusing on what can be, what we can be and become, and focusing on supporting that, or what we can live and experience and supporting that? Are we showing up in the world in support of creative power? Are we operating with spiritual power? Are we operating with personal power? Are we operating with creative power or not? If the answer is or not, then can we begin to recognize that we are operating spiritually disempowered, personally disempowered, and creatively disempowered, and is that something we want to address? See, so that's what we'll have the opportunity to undertake in a very deliberate and conscious way, in a way of exploration. And as I said earlier, this is not for everybody. The average person does not want to actually support personal growth, personality growth and development. They do not, the average person in the society that we are living in, this is not a value. This is not reported in the press or in schools or universities or in religious organizations. It's not, but this is what the great masters and teachers have spoken about from the beginning of time. Prophets and messengers in different ways at different times, in different contexts. It's all about human excellence. Are you interested in demonstrating human excellence. You have to think about it, because I can't tell you to demonstrate human excellence is something that you should undertake or you should value. I have to think about it for myself. I have to reflect and contemplate, is this something that I deem valuable for me? Am I going to do this work? Am I going to apply myself in power level 1, from spiritual disempowerment to spiritual empowerment? Am I going to apply myself in power level 2, from insecurity to security is 1, from addict to adult is 2, which means from personal disempowerment to personal empowerment, from personal powerlessness to personal power? Am I going to undertake that? Is that important for me to undertake? And that is one, going from insecurity to security, power level 1, from powerlessness to powerfulness, from relating self-abandonedly to relating self-fully, power level 2. And if you get levels 1 and 2 right, if you come right with levels 1 and 2, then you can access level 3, which is creative empowerment, living with vision, enlightened living, seeing and feeling realities into being, living with inspiration, enthusiasm, living with a dreamer consciousness, not looking at what is, but looking at what can be, not looking with your physical eyes and where your body is positioned in time and space, but looking multidimensionally at alternative realities that are now available for you to energize. See, that is a high level of human functioning, and that's level 3, power level 3. And these are all part of human excellence, operating beyond the human animal, operating beyond living like an animal, basically. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way, because human beings have a distinct difference between the animal kingdom and us. And that is our humanity, our humaneness, our being humane. And part of being humane is being a secure human being. Animals can't experience being secure. Animals can't experience being powerful, personally powerful. And animals can't experience being creatively powerful. The human being has a frontal lobe. In proportion to the rest of the brain, it is the largest proportion among the life forms on the planet, and even in the ocean, including the whales and the dolphins. Although a whale might have a bigger brain than a human being, but the frontal lobe in relation to the rest of the brain, the human being proportion is bigger. And that's what we're talking about here. All this that we're talking about is a higher cortical functioning level. It's the distinction between the animal and the human. Our higher order functioning, you see. We can most definitely grow. We have a personality. Animals don't really have a personality, although we can say that they do in their way. But they don't have a personality as we, as human beings, and they cannot develop their personalities. We can. We can play a role in the development of our personality, the person we are, how we be in the world, secure, insecure, how we interact in the world, powerful or powerless. And thirdly, how we operate in the world, creatively or reactively. So this is the path of human excellence. This is the commitment to human excellence. It's not for everybody. And I put it to you that this is the purpose of life. As far as I'm concerned, we live and we have the opportunity to support human excellence. And those of us who support human excellence are evolving ourselves to a higher level of human functioning. And for me, that is the greatest thing that you can do, the greatest achievement that you can apply yourself in, the greatest achievement that you can have on the planet is actually supporting your evolution. And as you do it, it supports everybody else's evolution, but it's supporting your own evolution, supporting your own evolution in terms of human excellence. Is the greatest achievement, because it benefits you, the results of which will be lived out by you in this world. You will have a more easier, more enjoyable, more satisfying experience of life. You will have a much more enjoyable, satisfying, fulfilling experience of life. And also your afterlife. That's what my work is about, taking us beyond trances, living beyond trances, the truth that sets us free, championing truth, living truthfully. This is our motto in Universal Bliss: progress and prosper through spiritual empowerment, supporting those who recognize and respect truth, live truthfully. Enlightening ourselves. So this to me is the best use of my time in life. If is my feeling that if you live your life and you can do whatever you want and you can have all what you think is society's current definitions of success, but if you don't support a movement to a greater security, if you don't support a movement towards greater personal power and applying yourself in a more nurturing and nourishing way to yourself and your life, if you don't apply yourself to develop your creative power, you have failed yourself. That's my personal feeling. And that doesn't mean it's good or bad or right or wrong, but I do believe it will have consequences for you in this world if you fail yourself. And in the world beyond if you fail yourself. You let yourself down. Only we can do this work. Only each of us can do this work. For ourselves. And this doing of this work for ourselves is the greatest labor of love that you can ever engage in. It's the greatest and most honorable endeavor that you can ever apply yourself in. So I just want to say congratulations to the students who have been on the path, who have ears to hear, and hearts to behold truth. Congratulations to you for having been consistent and committed as we go little by little along the way. And now it's time to get more real with ourselves and apply ourselves in the exploration of our own personalities and how they limit us, so as to undo that, to free ourselves, beyond our own self-limiting, to experience the highest levels of security, selffulness and satisfaction that we can in this realm and beyond our death in the realms beyond. So yes, once again, looking forward to the weekend and your involvement and participation in what is being shared here.